everybody. Welcome. It's a little intimate group, so we can have this as a conversation too. Should be on, yeah.
Give her a test.
Give her a test. Hello.
Hello there.
He knows. He knows how to use it. Yeah, so it's a small group, so if anybody has a question at any point, just like interrupt me or raise your hand or however you want to say it, just blurt it out. Fine. Yeah, my name is Elling. I'm the executive director of the Nickel, and yeah, we're really very excited. Every time Ken comes out with a new movie, we get really excited, and we know it's going to be something special, and this time is no different. And I had some content, like some knowledge of you. I've seen a video, you know, the guys that we were talking about just then, the Grind Mind.
Yeah.
This is a local filmmaking crew that make horror movies. They once did a short interview with you.
Uncle Gabe and the fairies.
Yeah, about a fairy story. Yeah. And it was just a straight story, and you were just so fascinating. I loved you, and that was my first contact with you. But anyway, it's, so to have a movie come out of that and feels really great. So thanks for making it. So Ken, I asked you this question a couple days ago, but I wanted to get you together to just to see what his side of the story is. How did you two meet?
Do you remember how we met? Do you remember our first date?
Jeez, I can't remember. Yeah, doing that film on Gerald Squires.
Was that the first time?
Yeah, you said you were going to interview me about Jerry.
Okay.
And you came to the Hair. We had the 10-year anniversary of the Hair out in Woodaway.
That's right.
We used to do the spring hair every year for
Right.
10 years. Successful too. Very successful. People from all over Newfoundland came there to read their poetry and tell stories and display their artwork and everything. But Shirley and I got burnt out, so we stopped it and then it died in the community. Happens all over Newfoundland.
Was that before we were down at an exhibit down at Christina Parker's once?
Yes, that's right.
And you came up to me and introduced yourself. So it must have been before the jury. Maybe I asked you to do the jury thing down there. And you came up to me and he came towering over me. You know, I never knew very little about him. And up to my face like that. And looking down at me and said, I'm dark like you too.
Yes, that's right.
You remember that?
Yeah, and I said, I knew somebody hung themselves once, and you said, tell me all about it. And I said, I forgot it.
That's
Very
right.
quick, I forgot it.
That was sometime later I asked you that, yeah, to tell me the story. Yeah.
That night I said, you know Jerry wore the crown of thorns. And you said, what do you mean he wore them? And I said, well, he went up to Pennywell Road and he asked the fella up there who had a thorn tree, could he borrow the thorns? And the guy said, what are you going to do with the thorns? Jerry said, I'm going to wear them. So he wore them for 3 to 4 days to get the feeling of Christ on the cross, right?
That's when he was doing the work for
for Stations of the Cross.
Mary Queen of the World out on top of the
that's
road.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
A lot of history, boy, in the arts of Newfoundland. Yeah, it goes back a long ways. We used to be down there at the LSP Hall having our exhibitions in this very spot. Jerry and Sheila O'Leary and everybody going around with them big boots laced up about halfway up her legs and everything. Great old days. She was the boss.
Sheila, she's on council now, isn't she?
Yeah.
She is, yeah. Same
She's
one.
out in Corner Brook now.
Deputy mayor.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What's on your, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Anything
Yeah.
you want to know, I'll tell you. If I know it.
Well, I got a question for you,
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
which I didn't ask, because I was so sick of hearing your stories. I didn't know where they came from or how you remembered them all.
Yeah.
That's not true, but I did hear a lot of stories, and I got them to repeat a lot of the stories again and again with the different costumes on and so forth. And but the question would be, how do you remember all those stories?
Well, when I went to school, I had to remember everything anyway, like all the formulas and everything. I didn't have to write them on the back of my hand. I knew them. Had to memorize them, right? So I've been memorizing storytelling out around the base years ago. I remembered everything that everyone told me because it was important for me to record it myself so I could tell it again. That's the way history is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you forget it, people lose connection with our old ways, right? And that's sad. Somebody said to me the other day, "Tell me a story." You know, yeah, come to our trivia night. I said, "I'm not interested in trivia." He said, "Come and tell a story." I said, "I'll tell you a story. You ever hear the story about Jack and the Glory?" He said, "Yes." I said, "May I begin it?" He said, "Yes." I said, "That's all's in it."
But some of those stories, I'm sure you've said how many times you figure recited. Because you said them to me.
Over and over, but I continually hear new stories all the time, right?
Come from where?
Well, like I dream some of them,
Mm.
you know? Like you hear so many stories when I was growing up, like I get my own spin on them sometimes, you know? Like I go and I dream something, I run out in the kitchen, I write it down with my eyes half open, trying to write it all down, because you forget dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the dreams are good, buddy, I can tell you that.
Some of them
Yeah.
don't make any sense, though.
No,
Then
but
you think they make sense when you wake up and write them down. Then you look at them the next
the
morning.
next day, yeah, but this one made sense, the one I dreamt. But the little boys in the mow of the evening, down by the land wash, you know, and they were looking out in the mow of the evening at the little thing on the water. It looked like a sod of grass, and the old fellow says, "Grandfather," they call him. You know, for out of respect, the kids call him grandfather. I dreamt this, see? And he says, "I don't know what it is either, but in the mow of the evening is moving." Said to the little boys, "Call it in." So the little boys call it in, and they started nibbling on his fingers, not between his fingers and everything. And they said, "Oh, it's a little duck, a yellow and black duck. It's a young duck. The down and everything is still on it." And the grandfather says, "Well, boy, that's pretty good. Send him over here to me." So old grandfather calls him over, and he says, and it takes a new appearance, you see, and it turns into a big, long mustache and everything as it gets older and taller and everything. And he says, "That's not a young duck. That's an old animal from the sea, an old sea dog," he said. He said, "I can talk the language of a sea dog." He said, "He's talking back to me now. And the reason he came into the land wash in the mow of the evening, he wants a new home. He don't want to live on the sea anymore. He wants to come home with us." So they take him home. And he lives in the community. And he chases the old man all over the community. And he befriends all the little children and everything the sea dog do. Very happy, goes to church, goes to the dues, the times and everything with the old fella. But pretty soon, someone dies. One of the little boys died. So the old man brought the sea dog to church and stayed through the church service. And then they buried the young boy before his manhood and everything. And then another little boy dies about a month later. Pretty soon they all died. So the people in the community said, "Look, whatever that creature is you brought up from the sea, that old sea dog," he said, "he's bringing bad luck to the community. All them young boys died," they said, that befriended that old sea dog. So the old man says, "Well, I'm going to go in the woods now." He said, "There's a fellow in there," he said, "that knows everything, and I'm going to ask him what this is all about, and why that old sea dog, and what he's all about, and what happened to the children and everything." So before he got out of the woods, he was just coming out of the woods up in the back of the land and everything, when the old sea dog come walking down the street, the old wood path, you see. That's the way it was in the community like years ago. It wasn't paved, you know. So anyway, he had the old sea dog, and then he changed his appearance, you see, and he got big long legs, big red legs, and a big red head like a great big bird, you know, like something like an eagle, but it wasn't. It had a big long neck and a big red head and everything. And the old man says, "Well, I know what it is now," he said. He said, "Yeah, I was told in the woods what it is," but he said, then 4 more little birds came up next to him, and they started growing red legs and everything, birds now. And in the mow of the evening, they all flew off into the sunset. And the old man said, "Yes, I know what it is," he said. "They came into the community to rob the souls of our children."
You dreamt that one?
I dreamt that.
You told me that. I have that on film
Yeah.
a bunch of times already.
I
But
dreamt that one night.
That's pretty dark.
I dreams dark stuff and good stuff. You should hear my sex stories.
Yes, I guess you have sex story dreams.
Yeah,
as
you
well.
just think of the Shade Rock for one thing. Huh?
the Shag
So-
Rock, yeah, it's a great name on that.
Yeah.
So Clifford, I mean, this is a feature-length documentary. Like, what is it like looking at yourself, like through someone else's eyes like that. Like,
Well, I must say, boy, Ken wrapped it up pretty good. He interviewed me for 4 years. He used to tell me to fuck off. And then he said, I'm the boss. You're not the boss. I'm the director and all this stuff. And I said, I know that, boy. You're the director.
so you got along really well.
So
then.
don't go telling me what to do. He said, I'm going to do it my way. So he did it his way, like the song. I did it my way. And when I went in and looked at the movie, at the documentary, boy, I tears in my eyes, really, you know, thinking back over my life and everything. And he put it all together so sweet and so nice. It was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I like Ken.
The guy is talented big time.
These.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good
Well,
job.
now, I got to
Thank
say
you.
one thing. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it. He learned a lot off his dad, because I knew his dad. And he was in the dark room, supposed to film with his dad, but he wasn't very
Oh,
old.
yeah.
Is that
I was
right,
12
Ken?
years old. Yeah, my dad
Yeah.
was
Josiah Harvey.
Josiah, that's right. He was a documentary filmmaker with the National Film Board. He trained at the
Yeah.
National Film Board, and then he set up the first film company here back in the 80s, Anchor Films and Video. Well, films first, and then video came. So I was 12 years old, splicing, 16 millimeter film together by hand. You cut it and tape it, and I've still got the moviola, the old moviola, in my studio that my dad had. I've still got his 16 millimeter camera now, which was probably at the time was probably a $30,000 or $40,000 camera, and it's worth $1,000 probably now if you could get it for it. But I won't get rid of it. It's beautiful. It was more hands-on then too, dealing with film with your hands, and just doing all that manually. And video is great because you can do things faster, without a doubt, and transmitting stuff. I mean, I can remember just even when I started doing films, we had to send. Well, you'd send stuff to the lab then, but just when video came, you had to send, CDs to all the festivals around the world. Now you just put it up on one site, and that's it. And you submit. You still have to pay for the film festivals, but you don't have to put anything in the mail anymore. I mean, digital age is just phenomenal for that. But there is the hands-on thing is a good place to start. Because I have that memory and I know the difference between that.
Did that connection? Did you knowing his father? Did that?
Well, I asked him
make
one
it
day. I
easier
didn't know
to
him till one day. I said, Ken, I believe
connect with him?
your father did a piece of work for me, like my grandmother on the flake, that sculpture he did.
That's right. He was a potter later on
Potter,
too.
right.
My mom was
And
too.
he did a lot of things, you see, and I can't say, yes, my father did that. And then I tied two of them together, then I knew how he got the big shot, He got most of it from his dad, see, like I got from my dad, right?
But
You know that picture you had on the picture of father when he was sick? He was there sitting in the chair. You said his father in the movie. That was the day father started smoking pot.
Oh yeah, was it?
Yeah, he was high as a kite there.
Oh, that shot of when he was in the
Yeah.
when Shirley said she was in the hospital. He was in the hospital dying.
No, that
Telling
was
stories,
just
yeah.
before. And Wade Penny up in Greens Harbor, see, he said there's some good marijuana. So father had never smoked it before, boy. So mother said, he saw, what was that like? You shouldn't be at that. He said, Millie, he said, if I had a cigarette, when marijuana had reached St. John's, I guess someone would light it for me, because that made me feel so good.
Did he stay on it?
No, when he ran out of cigarettes, that's all.
Well, it's legal now.
Yeah.
He didn't live long enough to enjoy it.
I had a feeling this interview would go this way, and I love
Yeah.
it.
But part of the reason I get people to do films too is because everybody, like Christopher Pratt, he wouldn't agree to do a film with anybody before that, but he saw the Jerry Squires film. So the things that you do before when and I interviewed Christopher for that, and I interviewed you for the Jerry film.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will agree to do films because they see the films and they trust you, and that's important because they're not, people think you're going to come in and do a news story. It's not what it is. It takes years and years to do a documentary properly and to figure out what it's about and the thematic unity and the layering. With this one, all the different interwoven storylines and putting Santa Claus throughout, who's kind of like a metaphor for never dying, and which storytelling is and which painting is and filmmaking is. I mean, you don't really die. You do physically, but it goes on. So. And putting the Santa through was a while to come up with that idea. But it all has to be linked. It takes a long time. It's like writing a book. It's the same thing. To do a documentary properly is just the way with like a book. You have all this layering, thematic layering and unity, and your right ending and everything. And so it takes a long time. But
It's really intimate too. Like it's like a, you know, you go, like, it's a long time. It took you 4 years to make it, right? Together, working
4
together.
years,
Yeah.
Through COVID.
So then, I know you're a confident person, but like, were there moments where you were just not sure if you wanted to tell him these things on camera, or?
I got
Oh,
lots
I
of I
couldn't
got lots
care
of
less.
stuff on him. Sure, I didn't put in the film.
Our hearts
I'm gonna
were
blackmail
sad.
him with later. I just couldn't use the stuff because it's just.
I guess, yeah.
And from other people too,
Too
you know,
much then.
people open up a lot. You know,
Jesus,
when you
I told you that big long story about Annie Tooks and Annie and the fairies, and he fucking left it out. He could have
Jeez.
done
Well,
the
you
whole.
did a
I
lot of
could have
work
lasted
on
the
this,
whole
yeah.
hour.
well, you know, you told me all those stories a bunch of times,
Yeah.
and then I had to decide, okay, am I going to put a full story in there because I can't do it. You know, I mean, you can't put all these stories in the film. So then I come up with the idea, okay, well, I'll just take bits and pieces from them and try to make a story from those stories in some kind of way.
And that you did in a good way too.
You know, that's the only way you could really do
Oh,
it.
yeah.
To capture it, right? And plus to get your personality, because you have all these stories. You're a man of a million faces, right?
Yeah.
You got to do a DVD bonus version with
Oh
all
my
the
God.
extended
It would be
stories.
it would be
Years
20
ago-
hours long.
Yeah, exactly.
Years ago, somebody told me something about someone in the community. I'm gonna tell you something now, and this is a good story. See, like fellas told me in Newfoundland, you like Calvin knows down there, like people in Newfoundland, you don't have to make up stories; they happen. Like I'm not going to mention any names, but I'm going to tell you a good story. When I was in the health sciences, this doctor said to me, "You never believe what happened to me." I said, "What?" So they closed the doors, like they used to do, especially when they're frigging around on their wives. But that was a different kind of a story. But anyway, he said there was a woman upstairs on the 4th floor. He said in the private room, and she was paying the money for the private room. But my patient was out on the floor with a ward, and she was dying. So he said I had to talk to the woman in the room to get her you know, to feel the way she. I told her, I said, look, if you mind to go out on the ward for a couple of days, my friend, my patient's dying, and let my patient have some privacy, go in your room, and that'd be nice. And the missus said, yes, we'll do that. She said, I'll go out on the ward. So he moves the other woman into her room. She was there for 2 days. She died, see. So then the other woman went back in her room, and she went down to Carnell somewhere, see, the patient. She was deceased now. So when he went back to see the other woman in the room, she said, you know, it's a funny thing, she said, ever since that woman here, she said, I can't find, my false teeth don't fit anymore. She said, I got them in my mouth, but she said, it jams me up and everything, and I got to do something about it. But he said, give me your teeth. He said, now carry them out and sterilize them and all this kind of stuff. So he took them, put them in his pocket, got them sterilized. Goes down to the funeral home. He knows what happened now, say. Right? So he goes down to the funeral home and he says to the family, he says, look, he said, me and your mother were pretty close, he said, for a long time. He said, she's been with me for years. I'm her doctor. So can I have some privacy with your mother in the room? So he goes in, he locks the door in behind him, and he prizes the teeth out of her mouth. And then he takes the other woman's teeth, see, and he puts them in the corpse's mouth, right? So then he goes back to the room and gives the real woman after his her real teeth, see? So he goes to the funeral. When he gets down to the funeral, the family's there. Oh, can we see you for a minute? He said, before his funeral. Oh my God, he said, Clifford, I'm scared, but I didn't know what was coming next. He said, you know. So he said, they called me in the room. They said, look, boy, I don't know what you did to Mother the other day when you were down there. You must be good friends because she had a smile on her face ever since. Yeah. See? That's a good story.
That's a good story.
It's wicked, isn't it?
It's wicked, yeah.
Is that the truth, as they say? The truth.
Oh,
is
That's
yeah,
the
strange.
God, now
nothing
that's the
strange.
holy God's
Oh,
truth.
yes, hold your hand up to the.
Yeah, that is the truth. Yeah.
Mm.
Truth, boy.
So when I mean 4 years spending this time together, was there anything that's you know, moments where you were surprised by each other, or what came out of each other, or what like
The thing that really surprised me, and I was very happy about, was that he started doing abstract art. Because you know,
Yeah.
I had to go somewhere, and that, you know, didn't know where I was going, and that's always the case. You know, with a documentary film, you never know. You know, it's not like you know, you have a script. You have an idea of how it's going to go, but it's made as you go, and it changes as you go always. And so, yeah, that's the abstract artwork.
You found that halfway through that I could do abstracts, right?
Yeah, that you were doing them, and you started doing them when I was making the film too, which was really interesting. Because then, and plus the connection with Allison, you know, the daughter who was doing abstract, and he was doing that. So there's a resolution at the end too, which I was like, wow, this is great. I got her back to say, you know, have a look at these, because
Yeah.
you guys kind of do the same thing, right? So that kind of you know, endears, you know, endears it more to the audience too, right? You're always looking for these points that you can connect with the audience, you know, in some way, and different storylines that can resolve themselves. Particularly humor. The humor, as I keep saying, is very, very important. It doesn't matter how dark you are, as long as you have humor in there, you'll always people will always attach themselves to you, to your film, right? And they'll wake up, even if it goes a little, you know, a little south sometimes, right? When you bring the humor, it brings people's attention back and their energy level back up, right? And keeps, so that's, I always look for the beats. And I look where they are in the film to see where the humor is, to make sure. And pussycats. Always put pussycats in the films because people love that. And animals, you know, and goats and, you know, all that stuff. 'Cause people, and the chicks. I mean, that was golden when that chick looked into the camera. I was like, holy man, people are gonna love this stuff. You know,
Ken, when you were doing this, were you, like, you were hearing these stories all the time? Were you influenced in the making of the movie through these stories?
Only
or
through you know, trying to figure out how to put them together in a way that I could, you know what I mean? I mean, I wasn't influenced. Well, I guess the film was influenced them by, because there was so many stories, I had to figure out how to present them.
Right.
And then I figured out how to cut them up and put them together and try to make another story.
But I mean,
naturally was
like the elements, like you're talking about, like you got to have a moment where that's funny, and you got to have a moment like if you go dark, then you go to you know, some light, and then, you know, some maybe.
I don't know.
If you go intense, then you'll ease up.
Like I said, you don't know what you're doing when you're in there, and you're just trying to get it done. It's kind of like you're like a bull in a china shop, and I'm a one-man crew most of the time because there's not a lot of money in this, right? And so I'm doing everything, and it's frustrating, you know,
And learned a lot this one. You did all your editing yourself.
Yeah, I did most of it. I did 90% of the editing myself. Usually me and Christopher Darlington, who's my editor. But this thing went on for so long, I would never be able to afford to pay him, so I cut most of it myself, and we'd go down to see him, and we'd go over it, and then I'd go back and cut it for another month. It was a long edit, but stories too. I mean, you know, he's just, and the hardest part with this is working on a documentary. Anybody staying bright and interested in the project, because the idea is always, when you get an idea and you start it, it's like any project you start. It's like, oh, you have all this energy and you're mad about it and you're enthusiastic, and as it moves on, you go like, oh fuck, when's this going to end? Right? I've had enough of this. You know what I mean? And that's the hardest thing with anybody, not just Clifford, but with any film. With Christopher Pratt, too. I mean, we went on the road together for 10 days, and at the end of it, you're like, I'm just saying, shut up. You know, I heard that story already, you know, fucking 10 times, right? You know? And in a joking way. But, you know, and he'd be back at me, too, with the same kind of thing. You get sick of each other after a while. But it was nice. We had supper the other night without, you know, any of that after the film, and it was enjoyable to sit down and actually, without having to say, oh, I gotta go get the camera now, or I gotta grab that, or, you know,
yeah, did you get sick of it, you know, having a camera in your face the whole
No,
time?
I didn't care about that.
he loved that. He'd do that for the rest of his life.
That's part of everyday life, you see. Whatever comes by. That's part of life. You got to do tell your stories to get out of your system.
But it was a long sorry, go ahead.
And when I was going to school, you know, I didn't cotton much to it. I loved history and stuff like that. But poetry was my people, you know, when I had to listen to poetry in school, I loved every minute of that.
Well, you recited well too in the film.
I recited a lot. I got one little one I got. It's last night I held a lovely hand, a hand so soft and neat. I thought my heart would burst with joy, so wildly did it beat. No other hand upon my heart could greater solace bring than the lovely hand I held last night, 4 aces and a king.
That's good.
You don't want to hear a rim shot after that, a drum roll.
Yeah, drum roll, yeah.
But I also had with the stories too. I got them back into the studio with different costumes, got them to say all the stories over and over again. So after a while, it's like, okay, and they're really long, you know, a lot of them.
Then I say, oh, I forgot this one.
Yeah, and then you go on. I'd be like, I don't need any more. And it gets to the point where you just have, you're dealing with especially with video, like they say, you know, the film's cheap these days, as they say, you know. Once upon a time, you shot about 20 to 1 on film, 10 to 1. So 10 minutes for every minute, or 20, you know, if you had a good budget, 20 to 1. But now you're shooting like 40 to 1, 50 to 1, 60 to 1, you know, because you can just keep shooting. And with me, I never, ever leave an interview, ever, or I do portraits too, right? You know, or until I know I have, like I'll just keep going forever. I'm like a mad dog, you know. And I know when I go somewhere, even if I'm going for something that I was going for, if I don't get that, that's fine. But I have to get something else, and that's usually what happens.
Yeah, you're determined.
You get something. Documentary filmmaking, you're always surprised by what you get, what you went for. You don't get, but you get something better a lot of the times, right? And I've known that. So you always have to stick it out and keep going, and then, but towards the end, when you do go for something, you need pickups or you need B-roll stuff. You know, you just go get it and gotta leave. You know, because it's just you'll be there forever. You know, like that stuff in the Health Science Complex, I shot that like 4 days before the premiere. I needed B-roll coverage, right?
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't do that with film. So
Well,
I went
asked
in
you
there,
about
and the people, he arranged that for me with so I went into anatomy and just went in there with a camera, you know, and shot that stuff and dropped it in, basically, like I said, a couple days before the premiere. Because you know, you can't be on someone talking for too long. It just bores people. You can't sit there. It's like it becomes news, basically, or whatever, you know. You always have to have coverage, or what they call B-roll. And the Health Science Complex was the people there were just so great in just making it happen really quickly. Because I was talking to the communications person there, and they were like, yeah, we could probably do that for you in about 3 weeks or so, you know, if you go. I was like, no, I need it like tomorrow. And they were like, what? I was like, yeah, but
The
they
premiere is coming
Yeah.
up.
People don't understand, do they?
Mm.
Like when Ken was asking me all them questions, see,
Yeah.
and I kept feeding the stories, right? Because my grandfather told me, see, when I was a young fella, I knew all about how to break in a pony or how to break in a lead dog, right? Because grandfather said, you know, he said, your lead dog is the most important dog in your sled, right? So what you do, he said, you don't feed him a lot every day until he gets broke right in, but you put a herring on a stick right out over in front of his nose, and he'll chase that herring all day. He said, but that's like Ken is.
Was he doing that with you?
Who was chasing? Who was making
You
who
had
chase?
me chasing the herring all over the fucking place.
What was the herring though? I guess it was a movie.
Yeah.
I was just fascinated with your history. I didn't know about this, about the history at the Health Sciences, at MUND.
Yeah, I filled into that pretty good, didn't I? 22 people applied for a job, boy, and I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And see, what it was all about was working with the pioneers of medicine, the people that came.
Yeah.
Not the crowd that's here now. I know most of them, too, because they learned off the crowd that came here.
right.
Like C. Scoops came here from the United States and taught open heart surgery. And Kevin Melvin is retiring now, and he learned, and his mentor was C. Scoops, and he taught all them young people now down below him how to do open heart surgery. So I was there in the very beginning.
It would take. I can't even imagine like your daily life at that kind of thing. It would be so kind of. I don't know. Do you just turn part of your brain off or something? You know?
No. Dr. Hanna used to come into me and my son. It was a privilege to talk to Dr. Hanna.
Yeah.
He had this man in his legs, femoral artery, and the veins in his legs. He couldn't move his legs, right, and everything. You know, he poor blood circulation.
Right.
So he put like a little hose on here, like a heater hose, and he attached it down here to a vein down here, and then he'd do it. And next year he'd be gone. Then he attached another piece of hose on, another piece of hose on. 17 years I did that drawing for him, layer after layer of how we kept that man alive for 17 years.
Jeez.
Amazing man.
It's just like you're staring at this stuff that is so
Smelled bad.
normal. Yeah, well, you're smelling it as well as like having to look at it for such an extended period. Like,
no, what I used to like when other people came in my office and fell on the floor or something.
right, just pass out.
And I had a nurse pass out one day.
Yeah.
I had a stomach there for about 3 weeks.
It's
But-
strange. Oh, sorry.
But what was interesting about the movie too was like it seemed to, you know, in the moment, some moments you felt like it bothered you a lot, or some moments it was
Some
like,
things
no, it's no
bother
problem.
me. Oh yeah, some things bother me.
So yeah, how do you does it swing around? For
Well,
you, or-
Shirley got me to overcome that by telling me about my pension.
Yeah, that's a good job. Yeah.
Yeah, she keeps saying you're going to get a pension. Go on back, boy. So I go back and dig in again. But it wasn't always dead bodies. There were statistics and displays about people all over the world, you know, going to conferences, doing their abstracts. And I'd have to do all the displays for 4x8 table and put it all together for every doctor.
I was surprised. I said to him, I'm surprised that his medical background didn't come into the abstract art, because it seemed like a natural.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I tied it together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can do abstracts. Like, I love doing abstracts. If I could give up what I'm doing, but I love doing my landscapes too. I guess right off on them.
Yeah.
But if somebody paid me to do abstracts, I give up my landscapes.
But in the health science complex too, you a lot of the people, the doctors that you knew in there,
Yeah.
became your I was gonna say client. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you
I mean, they buy you. Most of them bought all your paintings.
Yes,
didn't
see,
they?
here I was. I had a fantastic job, salary. I could buy all the paint and all the canvas I want, and I had a big portfolio, brother. And I take that portfolio and I walk through the health sciences. The doctor said, "What you got in the portfolio?" They knew what I had there. "Oh, that's paintings. Come over to my office and have a look at them." "Oh, yeah, I'm buying them." That's what you say. I sold some work in there.
He was in an environment, people with lots
And
of
the
money.
Irish
worked out.
community made me an artist, really. Why? They backed me 100%. Noel Brown, all that crowd. Fred Parfrey and all them, right? They were good guys. I used to go to parties with Jerry Squires. And with somebody, clients, and they would say, "Oh, this gallery in particular says, we're going to give you and Jerry steak dinner tonight." So Jerry and I went over to steak dinner. I said, "What time is this going to be over?" I wonder, next thing, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Jerry said, "I'm getting sober now, you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm getting sober." So then he said, "Well, ma'am, what about we have tea and toast now?"
It's morning already, yeah.
Morning already, yeah. Well, that's what you had to do. You had to be entertained if you were going to be an artist, because people always, if they bought your work and they paid money for it, they wanted to entertain you. And you were all part of their entertainment. And I loved every minute of it. And I still do.
I could spend all evening here today talking to these two, but I think we might clue it up. But I wanted to ask if there was any questions from the audience or questions from anybody here you want to ask? Or curious about something about the film, or? Yeah.
Okay.
Just wondering, the amount of effort in the makeup department to prep Clem Curtis.
No makeup on Clem. No. No makeup on Clem. We don't have a makeup department. No.
No, but anyways, he did you honor,
Yeah, he's a great guy, Clem.
really did.
Yeah, Clem's doing some really great work lately. I don't know if you've seen any of it, but he's been putting it up on Facebook. It's well, he's a really good artist too. But the stuff lately is just phenomenal. You've
Yes,
seen the
and
new stuff?
Yeah, and I was talking to a woman last night. She's trying to get a show for him now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It all helps. I mean, putting all this, doing a film too. You try to get as many people in there as possible to try to get them some. I've always liked Clem's art, and I thought, actually, I think a long time ago, is this right, Kelly? Kelly's right there. It's my one of my producers, and she's got a film coming out on a sports superstar, Jada Lee, 17-year-old, who was the first woman to pitch on a man's team at the Canada Games. She's already in the Baseball Hall of Fame, so that's coming up. We're excited about that. But what I was going to ask you was, I think early on this film was going to be called Clem and Clifford, wasn't it? Yeah, it was, right? Yeah, so that's a long time ago. So I was going to do, what I wanted to do was have, and you made me think of that, which I haven't thought of since when you asked that question. I was going to do the traditional and the abstract with Clem, right, and put two of them together. But then what it ended up being was about him with Clem there commenting, because I wanted somebody not like him, in terms of work, to talk about his work, so. Clem was great, and he's a bit of a madman himself too, like
See,
Clifford. So
all the
they all
abstracts
fit
I
together.
do, I fish him off I fish him off to him, to Clem.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I know.
Clem looks at him, and then he gets back to me with his abstracts. And
Yeah,
we're
I didn't
at
know
the-
that. I didn't
We're
know
at
that.
this on a daily basis.
Yeah, I didn't know you were communicating.
And
with him.
he's connected with our home, see, with the Simmonses, Glenn Simmons,
Okay.
and all that crap. That's his first cousins. They're all
yeah.
talented people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, any
No-
other questions
No
for Brad?
questions
Yeah,
or
go for
two.
Can you make that doll dance for me when I come see you sometimes?
What do you say?
Make the doll. Can you make that doll dance for him?
Yes, I'll make that doll dance for you. Yeah. Indeed, I will.
It's a deal.
Good old diddling song.
Entertainment. That's entertainment. Yeah.
I'm going to be going out again soon looking for Newfoundland ponies.
Yeah.
Is it true Newfoundland ponies don't like bright colors like my bright yellows and oranges?
That's all bull.
Okay.
Bulls like bright colors, so.
So Renee down there, see, Renee and I, we hooked up the ponies all the time. In the winter months, going down the track, and one day Renee said to me, "How come you're always out in front?" We had the big horses in, right? "How come you're always out in front? How come I can't go out in front?" She had this big Frisian, see? I said, "How are you going out in front?" "I don't care." So I jumped in the sleigh and old Misty, my big horse, she says, "Fuck Renee." She must have said to herself, "I'm going to tear my harness up to catch up to her." Next thing, the bills start coming off on the trees and every fucking thing. Passing, going down scrape by Renee. Another day we went to Harslope with Denise, remember? And Denise had this big horse, a racehorse or something. QnA, they call her over in Isle QnA. So I said, "Denise, Renee, what's wrong with Denise?" She said she's afraid her horse is going to tip over or something. I said, "That horse wants to go." So I said, "I'm going to brush that horse now." What I mean by brushing, you go up her side and scrub the britching off another horse. By Jesus, what do you do? You should see old Queenie when she took off out around wide away. Yeah, Roger said there was no heater in that carriage. He said nearly froze to death.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Great job, by the way, really good job.
Thank you.
Really great. I love to see that today. And I'm thinking actually, my wife who couldn't be here today because she's sick. Where will I be able to show her the film? Where will I see the film? How do I get the film?
Nowhere yet. I mean, it could have watched it online. How long is it running online for? Here.
If you
The nickel.
if you click the link tonight, you can have 2 days to watch it. So you can watch it at home.
Yeah, so it is online.
It's nickelfestival.com. It's in that book
Yeah.
there.
Yes, I forgot to keep mentioning that to people because a lot of people on Facebook are out of province and stuff too. They can watch it out of province too.
Yeah,
right?
it's across Canada.
Yeah, and
Across Canada.
Yeah, it can go across Canada. So anybody outside of and usually it's geo. What do you call it?
Geo-blocked.
Geo-blocked. But you do all of Canada. Usually it's just in the region.
Well,
I didn't know that.
It was in the contract.
I would have had an argument with you about that. But it is coming on NTV too eventually as well, and then it'll be video on demand. I have Vimeo, so it'll be up there for to be able to look at. And I would imagine probably some DVDs too. I would think because a lot of people who are
with the bonus.
Yeah, with the bonus
stories.
feature. No, just elderly people too. A lot of them, they don't go on the internet, So
Yeah.
I thought you'd like to have
But
some
when
DVDs.
you go to coffee shops and places like that, you've really got to come up with a laugh stand, because that's what they want to do. They want to laugh,
Oh yeah.
you know.
So yeah, one more question, if there isn't anything from the audience. One more question for both of you. Ken, I want to ask you both individually. Like, what do you hope viewers take away from this film?
I've always done this encouraging. I did it with my book, The Town That Forgot How to Breathe, too, talking about the death of storytelling. I just want people to kind of think about what's being lost, like Clifford talks about, and to learn your stories, and not go home and watch a movie every night of somebody else's life. Experience,
Unless it's this one.
No, this is this one, but I mean, everybody goes home and says, "Oh, what are we watching tonight?" And everybody's watching it, and you're vicariously living somebody else's life, which isn't even a reality.
Oh.
Constantly, if you're doing entertainment, is fine, and everybody wants to get lost every now and then. But every single night, just watching television, you're not living your life, right? I mean, even just turn it off and learn your stories. Just sit down and talk, and I'm talking about families and. Children and and all that kind of stuff. Just learn where you came from, because it'll all die with the cell phones and everything.
That's sad, isn't it?
It's like like you were saying, and I've always believed too. television killed.
Yeah. Old Uncle Arch Golden, when we were growing up and the father was growing up, he sat on a rock on the side of the road and told him stories of long ago in England. So that's how I learned it from my father. And some of all that pretty good. This fella came down here from bought some pennies off me from Ontario. A fella by the name of Ingo. And he said, "Clifford, I want to ask you one thing that you just asked Ian." He said, "Storytelling is important to you." I said, "Yes." He said, "Just stop and think for a minute," he said. "What I'm going to ask you about now. What's going to happen to all the storytellers that's telling your stories and your kind of stories in 50 years from now? Now, buddy, that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be around, are they? I don't think they're going to be around.
Well, see, television, I often say to people about reading, you know, when people read a book, you're creating the movie in your head with the author. That's why when people go see a movie, they go, that's not what way because it's not your movie, right? And that's the imagination. And television and movies are the death of the imagination because you have no imagination anymore. Everything is just doing it for you, right? Which is okay every now and then, you know. But books, you read books, and encouraging young people to read your imagination.
Yeah.
You create and build the cathedral with the author, you know, your own world, right? So that's very encouraging. Same with storytelling. You sit around, you know, and
Like
do that.
even build your own house. We were, if I had to go and get a mortgage to build a house, my grandfather would have cursed me. I had to learn how to build a house myself, right?
You got to build it with your own 2 hands.
He said to me, beavers build their own houses, my son. So you got to build your own house. My father and I built my own house.
It's crazy how credit is so pervasive now. I mean, even my mom's generation. My mom, you know, when my mom and dad got married, they bought a ensuite, as they called it, when you know, the whole thing, and she bought it on credit. And my grandmother was scandalized by this and thought, because you know, nobody bought anything on credit. You know, now it's just everybody's. You know, the average I think is $10,000.
Yes, and I don't believe in that either.
On a credit card, I think everybody owes $10,000. I think the average, if you added it all up.
Per person, it's probably higher than that.
Everybody
20,
living
30.
beyond their means. Mm.
So, Clifford, wanted to ask you that question as well. Like, what do you hope people take out of this movie that you're?
Well, I hope they can see that our heritage is very important to us, and storytelling is important, and painting is all about dedication. If you don't paint like a millionaire, if you don't have a cent, if you don't buy the paint and use the proper paints and draw and draw, keep drawing and drawing until you learn how to draw really well. But now people who go to art school now don't do that stuff like we did. But I found that if you want to paint a rock, you got to think like a rock. You got to put the weight and everything in it. You know?
That's great.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I tell my students too. I used to have students. I had one student, Jackie Evans, and way back 40 years ago, I suppose. I taught her art in art school, and she said in the College of Trades nighttime. And she was my best student. And I said, Jackie, you should go to art school in NASCAD. No, she said, I'm married. She said, and I got children, and my husband says I can't go. Well, I said, that's too bad. 3 days later, she came in, she said, I'm going to leave my husband, I'm going to NASCAD. So she went to NASCAD, and she finished 4.5 years up there and got a degree in art.
That's one thing, what Clifford mentioned there about, you know, just working all the time. People think artists or anybody involved in the arts are lazy. I mean, it's a kind of thing. People, if you're going to be any good at what you do, you have to do it all the time, just like a job. It's a job. It's like a craft.
Yeah.
I used to say when I was writing books, I used to say I'd ask. A friend of my son's was wanted to be a writer, and I'd see him every now and then. I'd say, "Did you have you worked on your book lately?" He said, "No, I really haven't felt." I said, "Listen, if you want to be a master cabinet maker, you got to make cabinets every day, right? Otherwise, you'll never be a master cabinet maker." And that's what you have to do. I mean, everybody has to, you know, you have to work, and that's, you know.
Well,
that's what Clifford
yesterday
says.
morning, I got
You have
out
to be
of the-
driven.
I got up out of bed. I was out the night before, but I got up out of bed and I said I put a big canvas up on the easel, 32 by 40. And when I went down to get a nap after lunch, Shirley said, "What have you got in your hair and your beard?" And it was dried into my beard. The paint was spattering all over the place, right? But I was truly inspired. There was like a big orchestra going on. Those big cliffs and everything, all the paint was falling off as I was putting it on. I was really inspired. And I've liked that all my life. I went up to St. Bride's last year and painted St. Bride's, didn't I? Went up with the boys and got drunk and everything. That's Long Willie's house. Look, you got look. Yeah.
So, wrapping it up, is there anything you'd like to add? Thank you for joining us today, but is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Not really, no. I think we said enough. And but I want to thank Clifford for coming out on Father's Day and being here and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Clifford, do you have anything else you'd like to say, or?
Yeah, keep faith.
Sorry,
with
I'm
it.
opening the door again, but.
Yeah, keep faith with a departed time. Is that good enough?
Could you say that again?
Keep faith with a departed time.
I think that's what you call a mic drop. You can just drop that. Thank you very much. And thanks, everybody.